My name is Charles Miller. I am the newly installed chair of Climate Reality, also Los Angeles chapter. And my vice chair and former chair and guy who really still knows a lot more about what the chapter history is than I probably ever will, Andy Shrader, is here. And you want to wave to your fans? Andy is also going to be referred to this evening as the enforcer. So that means if you're a Zoom bomber, you're going to have to deal with Andy. And that's the way we're going to go forward. Two things. A lot of these meetings, I don't know about you, but I'm in a lot of groups and they do acknowledgements and things at the beginning of the meetings. I want to point out the way we're going to do this. Rather than reading you a set of rules, for starters, I'm going to say, everybody just be cool and be kind to one another. We're all here as volunteers. We're all here because we want to be, and everybody's put in time. And if somebody says something you don't agree with, try to just be cool with it and try to go with it. And everybody's opinions are welcome. And we want to make sure everybody gets an opportunity to speak, but be polite, talk like you'd speak to your grandmother, and then, everything's cool. And with respect to acknowledgements, traditionally we do an acknowledgement to say that we meet in Los Angeles, which is historically Tongvalan, which are part of the San Gabriel tribe of Mission Indians, as they refer to themselves. And we want to acknowledge the fact that, this was their place before we came for most of us. And we need to always keep that in mind and be respectful of that. All right. So again, thank you for coming tonight. This means a lot that you took time out of your evening and, got together to nerd out on climate stuff on an evening when you could have been doing lots of other things. And I appreciate that. I want to thank you for your, your investment of being here. And hopefully we'll have a nice meeting and you'll enjoy it. Some housekeeping. We're going to try for a while a new format going forward on the meetings. The new format is that we're doing 90-minute meetings. First half hour will be kind of housekeeping and business stuff and talking about, inter-chapter stuff. And then we're going to launch tonight, which you may have seen the promotions, our new series, which is going to be interviews called Climate Movers and Shakers, where I'm going to be interviewing different people, who are climate advocates, be they local, be they national, be they international. And they're going to talk to us about the work they're doing and maybe give us some insight in the work we're doing and how to interact and have the most success and adopt best practices. We're also going to kind of for 2023 attempt to have a format where we do 2 Zoom meetings, starting with this one. And then the every third meeting will be an in-person meeting. And so in the name of getting you to put us in your calendars right here, right now, I'm going to pimp the next 2 meetings so you can be ready for them. So the next meeting is going to be Sunday, March 19th, 5 p.m. To 6:30 p.m. And the guest we're going to have for that meeting, which we're very happy to have and very excited about, who will be the second person in our Climate Mover and Shakers, is the Chief Sustainability Officer from UCLA, Narit Katz. And so we're going to interview her and dig out on all the stuff that she's doing. So please put that in your calendar. There will be a newsletter and there'll be updates. So, that stuff will be coming if you don't want to do it. But if you want to lock it in there, Andy was courteous enough to put it in the chat room for you. So it's already there. And then our April meeting is going to be on April 30th at 2 p.m. And that will be a in-person live people next to live people meeting at the Westwood Greenway, which is in West LA. It's a habitat restoration space between Westwood Boulevard and Overland Avenue. But for now, the important detail is Sunday, April 30th, 2 p.m. We're going to do a tour of that space aimed at sustainability interests and, talk about biodiversity and water and all kinds of stuff that, we should dig. So that's going to be what's going on Sunday, March 30th. Or I'm sorry, Sunday, April 30th. And now you have your next 2 meetings. I'm going to now talk about our committees. We've revamped our entire committee structure. We have new committees. Some of them are existing committees that have been carried over. Some of them have had a combining of the committees that we have. And we're very excited about kind of launching these. Even the committees that have been around the longest are still going to be open to new ideas. If you want to come in and you have new ideas on this subject, work with these people. This is where a lot of the gritty work gets done in Climate Reality in our LA chapter. And we have some real go-getters who are chairs and co-chairs of these committees. And I want to take a quick moment to kind of introduce them briefly. They're going to talk a little bit about what their committee is going to be doing or some of the goals of the committee. And if you are a new member or an existing member who was not on a committee, we're going to have the communications people reach out to you, the community people rather, reach out to you and try to get you on a committee because we want you to be engaged at that level. It's totally cool if you just want to come and see these interviews and that's all you want to do and that's your level of involvement. But if you want to really get involved with rolling up your sleeves and you know, getting your knuckles dirty on this battle to try to save our planet, the committees are where the real, you know, rubber meets the road. So that's why I'm going to invite all of you to participate in that. And I'm going to start with our prestigious former co-chair and current vice chair, Andy Hatala, who is now the chair of the Water Committee, in addition to his responsibilities in being the enforcer in tonight's meeting. So everybody welcome Andy, and thank you, Andy. I'm handing it over to you. If you could tell us a little bit about water and what your goals are for that committee for this year.
Yep. Thank you, Charles. As a former co-chair and having strong connections and a leadership position in the San Fernando Valley chapter, we've actually been meeting with several elected officials. We've met with state senators, we've met with assembly members, we've met with city council members and county supervisors. And the topic at hand, we've discussed a number of issues that are passionate and pet priorities for the chapter, but the big thing has been water. So we all know that California has been in a perpetual drought. We've now experienced flooding, and now we're back to experiencing, it seems like, drought yet again. And so what we're advocating for is any approach that will allow us to have a sustainable supply of water. So you can check out the website. Michael Rockmus, props to him, has been nice enough to update the Water Committee webpage. It says what we're focused on: sustainable water infrastructure. So that's going to be water recycling and rainwater capture. Those are the biggest things that we're advocating, but also expanding renewable energy. It takes water to create current electricity. Renewable energy takes little to no water. So we're advocating that. Sustainable agriculture, since agriculture consumes roughly 40% of California's available water supply. And last but not least, nature-based solutions, which means taking out concrete, restoring areas, restoring biodiversity, but also allowing for more groundwater recharge. So those are all of the things that we're advocating for. I do have a couple committee members that I know are interested, but if you are interested and passionate about sustainable water infrastructure, go ahead and put it in the chat and I will reach out to you. I also want to do a quick prop to Kimberly Durden. She's one of our most recent members and she's really hit the ground running, and she will be helping me right now, at least. Thank you, Kimberly, for helping with the social media aspect of the water campaign. Thank you. If I missed anything, let me know, but otherwise, I'm happy that you're all members. I'm happy that you all joined. Good turnout. And thank you, Charles, for taking over the reins.
Yeah, no, thank you, man. And, you know, isn't that a great example of all the passion that we have here and all the enthusiasm we have? I mean, this is, you know, what we can really do. And we have great people like Andy who are running these committees and have the ability to absolutely move the needle on these issues. And so thank you, Andy, for that work. And I will ask going forward that could Cecile and Andy, could you guys kind of monitor the chat? And if there's any questions or anything that are germane, maybe just, you know, interrupt me.
Yeah, no problem. I'll get it.
Yeah, awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to now use that with that really graceful segue, move on to the Community Engagement Committee, which Cecile Namer-Pai and David Merritt are the co-chairs of. And think of these guys as the party animals of Climate Reality Los Angeles chapter. So they're going to kind of help you find your niche, help you find your groove, help you find your spot. And I'm going to hand it over to you guys. Since I already mentioned your name first, Cecile, I'll throw to you first.
Thank you, Charles. Hi, everyone. I'm Cecile. So yeah, in the community engagement, we would like to help you find the one committee or many committees that you feel more attracted to. So you may have already received a welcome letter from us and a quick survey. That's a super efficient and helpful tool for us. So please do not hesitate to send it back to us and to contact us if you have any question. And the Community Engagement Committee is also in relationship with all the other nonprofits in the Los Angeles area. Well, maybe not all of them, the one that are in the environment area, but not only. And we want to put an emphasis on climate justice and environmental justice. And we would like to help the co-chairs if we can receive, if you have questions within the chapter, that can be, maybe we can handle them to try to remove some emails from their mailbox or some weight from their shoulders, because our co-chairs are super, well, they have lots to do for the chapter. So please, we may not be able to help, but that could be a way to handle things too. David, if you want to add anything.
Yeah, thanks, Cecile. This grew out of the chapter liaison, and we still do some of that. We try and keep track of the other climate reality chapters in California and the California Coalition. We also try and keep track of the other large environmental groups. For instance, the Sierra Club, 350. There's now a new one, Third Act, and keep track of all that stuff and keep from duplicating our efforts. And yes, we especially want to find and reach out to youth groups and environmental justice groups and groups that we have not formed strong enough relationships with in the past. I'll turn it back to you, Charles.
Thank you, David and Cecile. You know, one of in the short time I've been working as chair, I've been trying to meet with the committee chairs and attend some of their meetings and things, and there's so many good ideas going on. If you've arrived here tonight, this is the beginning of a new chapter in our organization, and it's going to be really cool. For those of you who are not overly familiar with climate reality, this might be a good moment to say that you know, this is kind of something that grew out of the Al Gore films, the Inconvenient Truth, and that movement. And a lot of us have attended these big training sessions where we go for a week and either in person, or some of them have been done virtually too, and become an official climate reality leader, ambassador. And you know, that's something that we want to encourage people to do, because then you're equipped to go around and do presentations and things along those lines. And we'll talk about that, and you'll have opportunities to participate in that. But if you're new and that sounds like something that would be of interest to you, then you know, reach out to me or reach out to Cecile or David, and you know, they can connect you to those things going forward. You know, we want to be kind of the social and best practices information hub of people in LA who are working on climate. And so, you know, if you're in another climate organization, come be in this one too, and bring the information from that one so that we can share best practices and network along those lines. And to that end, I'm going to now throw to, is Lucy still sneezing? Do we have Lucy still here? I know we have Eugene.
Yes, I'm still here.
Awesome.
Unfortunately, my video won't turn on.
No worries. Well, then
There it is
I'm
on.
going to introduce now Eugenie and Lucy, who are the co-chairs of the Climate Curricula and Youth Engagement Committee, which is really one of our heavy hitter committees. So Eugenie, why don't you take the lead and tell us about what's going on?
Okay, well, I might ask Lucy to go ahead first, but I'm sure that because she is the founder and the main person that's been with this committee.
I threw it to you because you look like you know, you were needing to be engaged, and I know, you know, okay. Lucy's an old pro, and she's busy fighting a cold, it looks like, so you know.
Okay, well, I will start, and Lucy, please add. Well, okay, so the Climate Curriculum Committee, we passed a resolution over a year ago, and with the school board of the Los Angeles School District, and now we're really in this phase of implementing this resolution, and we want to see curriculum integrated in all phases, all subjects, in all grade levels, grade K through 12. It's quite intense working with the school district, and as you can imagine, the institutional barriers of getting things done. But there's a task force, and then there are training. We have what are called climate champions that have been identified for about 200 schools, if I'm correct.
240.
240. Oh, thank you. And so now we're looking at how we can support those climate champions. And, some of it is providing a lot of resources and training, which mostly the district has to do, but we're kind of filling in a lot of that need. And then the new part, and I'm going to ask Lucy to add anything else about the curriculum, but we're also now condensed with the youth committee. And we want to involve youth to a greater extent in both the curriculum committee, but also in climate reality in general. That would be something I'm very interested in as well. How youth can join any of our committees in, whether it's curriculum or not. I mean, certainly we'd like to get their input about curriculum and see, support them in what they're doing. I think that was actually one point that I heard, was that how important it is just to support youth organizations and what they're doing in general, as opposed to just always thinking we have to, create something new for them. I'd like to see youth more involved in general. Like, there are some activists, and then there are some youth that are not necessarily engaged in climate issues. And I'd like to see, support people on both fronts. I also am in the South Bay of Los Angeles. We used to have a climate reality chapter here, and that didn't continue. And so I would like to see more involvement in the South Bay here with Climate Reality Los Angeles. And I've kind of connected, I was telling Andy that I've connected with the League of Women Voters, and I'm also part of the Sierra Club and the Citizens Climate Lobby South Bay chapter. Anyways, to make a long story short, I'm interested in kind of engaging youth and also the South Bay in climate reality. So Lucy, do you want to add anything?
You did a great job. I think just to get people to understand what we want out of the resolution is already passed. The resolution says now that PK through 12, all subjects will have climate instruction. And the motivation behind that is probably obvious to us, but it's way beyond STEM, right? That's the first thing that we have to get by. This is not a science question. This is a culture, what determines policy is culture and history. This is a humanities question. And so that's why we want all teachers figuring out, all disciplines figuring out how to infuse climate into what they're teaching, so that kids can deploy any of the talents that they have onto familiar climate issues, right? So one thing that we right now, we think that the entire climate movement needs to always think of an education side. For example, if you're passing some kind of legislation, can you find a teacher, or we'll try to find you a teacher who can make a lesson out of it. And then we'll try to get that. We have the means to get that posted to teachers in LAUSD. The other thing is that right now, we have a whole ladder of engagement on the website that you can look at. I don't want to go over that, but right now there's something going on that all of us should think about, and that is that it looks like the 30,000 member teachers union and the SEIU staff who represent the staffers, those unions have reached an impasse with the LAUSD negotiators for a new contract. So we're looking at preparing for things that would be, for union action. And I'll tell you this, there is no way, given what the teachers have been through for the last 3 years, that that climate education is going to be done well without full staffing. You know, all the supports, all the the different libraries and you know, all the different things that the union is asking for. So in my opinion, we should support the entire Beyond Recovery platform of the UTLA. So that's something we should think about and decide on.
Thank you, Lucy.
So that's one thing. I just wanted to, well, I'll put it in the chat. There's a union action soon that everybody in the city should support. I'll put in the chat. Thank you.
So as you can see, those guys are really engaged already. So if that's a great place to really learn about that particular subset and that of the fight. So thank you, Eugenie and Lucy, for that. Michael Rockness, and is Ashley Dawson here? I don't know if Ashley's here. I didn't see if Ashley is, but Michael and Ashley are our co-chairs of our marketing committee. So this is you know, not the same thing as our community, which is kind of the board reaching out to you. This is the communications of our messaging kind of a thing. Mostly, well, I'll let Michael explain it. Michael, I'm throwing to you, buddy.
Hi, thank you. My name is Michael Rockmes, and Ashley is here. So we're the two co-chairs of the Marketing Communications Committee. Our job is to promote the chapter, make sure that all the good work of the different committees is available and, you know, for people to learn about. And when there's actions that people know about them. So we're in charge of updating the website, doing newsletter, managing the social media accounts. We're also in charge of fundraising and hoping to help with things like press releases. So we both, Ash and myself, are new as committee chairs this year. And we are trying to build up the committee. We could use as much help as you guys as there is available. So anybody who wants to volunteer for the committee, you don't necessarily have to have background in marketing or communications. You can just reach out, put in the chat or email the chapter, and we'll give you something to do to help out. And I do want to make one small pitch, which is previous to this, my role was chair of the Green Buildings Committee. Green Buildings now is a subcommittee of the Legislative Committee. If you live in Burbank or Culver City, I would love to talk to you because that's areas where we're going to try to pass some building electrification policy, and we could use all the local help that we can get. So that was the last thing I wanted to say. Ash, I don't know if you wanted to say anything else.
Hi, yes, I'm Ashley. So sorry, my Wi-Fi is not good. So if I turn on the camera, it gets all sketchy. But I'm Ashley. I'm co-chair, very excited to be co-chair for this year. And I'm going to put right now in the chat a little volunteer application. If you're interested to join this committee, that'd be awesome. No pressure to anybody. I know it gets overwhelming sometimes with so much to fill out, but if you just had like any marketing experience at all and you wanted to volunteer time to us, here right now is the form you can fill out, and this will help us keep everything organized on our committee. Thanks.
And I want to reiterate for those who didn't show up, who weren't here when I was doing my preamble, that we have Cecile and David who are going to be engaging with everybody who attends tonight to invite you to select a committee to be involved with if you would like to, because we want to really get those committees staffed and get people excited about the particular things that they're into. And, you know, it's also okay if you want to go to a couple committee meetings of 2 or 3 different committee meetings and then see what's the best fit for you. You know, those things are all cool too. So moving on, we have a couple other committees that I don't think we necessarily have the leaders here tonight. Do we have anybody from the food committee? Is Lisa or Jen here? I think Jen's on maternity leave from her duties of Climate Reality, if I remember correctly. I don't think they're here. Food Committee, Joan, you're raising your hand? You're muted.
Yeah, I'm on the food committee. I'm not a chair, but I did just want to mention one thing that might be important. And anybody who's willing to sign the petition for regenerative agriculture, Regenerate America, I'm going to put the link in the chat. It's a really important thing. They're working on a petition to Congress to support regenerative agriculture in the Farm Bill. And the more signatures they get, the better, obviously. So anyhow, that's all I have to say about that. And yes, I don't know where Lisa is, but Jen is on maternity leave.
Thank you, Joan. Appreciate it. We have the aforementioned Legislative and Policy Committee too, that is chaired by Andrew Ellis, who is, you know, kind of the patriarch of our chapter, I think. I mean, he was one of the co-founders. He was my gateway drug to get me involved in Climate Reality. And I don't think he's in the room
He
tonight.
is not, but I can give a 15-second update, which is
Cool.
there are now thousands of bills being considered by the California legislature. And so we are steadfastly reviewing all of those and trying to narrow them down to roughly 20 to 30 that we think are most important. And the Water Committee is also reviewing specific water regulations as well. So we are in the midst of looking at all of those. We will get back to the committee as a whole when we've narrowed those down. It doesn't mean that all bills aren't important, but we are trying, because we can only advocate for so many, to pick those that will have the greatest impact and further the priorities that the chapter has identified.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Andy. And again, if any of this sounds like it fits you, reach out right in the chat room and we'll make sure you're connected with the chair of that committee and you'll be, you know, part of it as soon as you want to be. A couple other committees very quickly. I don't think we have representation from them here, but if you're on the committee and I'm not aware of it and you want to say something about it, that's cool. We have a climate business committee, which sometimes is called Climate Business Working Group. And Ashley Craig is the chairperson of that. And we also have a faith-based committee that William Morris, not the agency, is the chair of. And I think those are both self-explanatory to some extent by the name, but we can certainly give you more information on either one of those if you are interested. I see a question in there. It's like, is there a list of the committee? Oh, well,
Yep,
Ashley beat me to it. She beat me to the punch. Yeah, if you go on our website, we've got a list of the committees and it features the chairs and a way to contact people, so you can already jam on it. One thing you will not see on the website as of today, though it will be up there soon, is the Biodiversity Committee. That's something we decided to establish, and we had some leadership on it that it turned out that person was unable to do it. And so we've been a little bit in a vacuum on it. Andrew Ellis and I are going to at least kind of temporarily interim be co-chairs of it, and that might stick, or we'll invite somebody else to do it if somebody else is interested and wants to take the run on that. My background mostly is in biodiversity advocacy, and we're going to do our first meeting of that on Zoom, March 12th, 5 p.m. And the thing that we're going to do as an initial effort is work on getting our urban forest to have more support for biodiversity with native contents of plants. And in those public projects, right now, the city, despite many efforts from many stakeholder groups for a long time, continues to plant non-native trees almost exclusively. And they use several metrics to try to avoid planting natives, quite frankly. And we're going to work with the people who actually created those metrics to change them so that they're more reflective of actual science, so that the city will then not have that one excuse to try and continue their policies as business as usual. So that's going to be the first thing we're going to do, and it'd be a great way to get your feet, you know, in the fire, in the battle if you're interested at all in this particular area. And Andrew and I have a lot of passion about biodiversity and, you know, saving the butterflies and the bees, dude. All right, so Let's see
Charles?
what else we got. Is Andy here? We're now at 7:31.
I am arrived.
He is here, right on time. So, just want to tell you guys right now, before we go to Andy, we are going to do a one-time only giveaway of a T-shirt at the end of this meeting. So you have to stay till the end to get the T-shirt. And I'm going to tell you which T-shirts you might get to. Yeah, exactly. Let's hear a little love for that. So we have these really cool T-shirts, and they're in this big bag that Tara had to haul around, and I am now the keeper of the bag, as they say. And we're going to give away one of them tonight to remind you how cool the T-shirts are. And we're going to ask you a trivia question about something in the discussion coming up with Andy. I don't even know what it's going to be yet. So you're going to have to not only stick around, but at least kind of pay attention. So that's an incentive to be involved. And we'll also talk about, if you are not the person who gets the T-shirt, how to buy one of these T-shirts. They're quite affordable, actually, for what they are. So that's my little tease for the end of the meeting. But I'm now going to introduce Andy Shrader. Andy is,
Excuse me, Charles, just a second. It's Cecile. I'm just going to drop in the chat the form that you can fill in to tell us at the community engagement committee which committee you're interested in, and so we can directly talk to each other. If you don't want to drop your name in the chat, no problem.
excellent. Thank you, Cecile. I appreciate that. I want to work with whatever your comfort level is on this kind of stuff. So anyway, Andy Shrader is somebody that I've had the pleasure of kind of working with on different campaigns for different sustainability-oriented initiatives for, gosh, a decade or so. He's a really great guy. And I have to tell you, in all my years of advocacy for about 20 years in LA, there's never been somebody who's been more receptive to hearing people that's within the city structure than Andy Shrader. And in fact, if you go around to environmental groups and you ask them, well, we don't know how to get this to work in the city. In the last 10 years, the common answer would be, I want you to meet this guy I know named Andy Shrader. And he was always there to hear people's ideas about things and to try to help them, be that just giving them good advice, being one of the more important things. But well beyond that, Andy has been, through his relationship with former council member Paul Koretz in CD5, he has been the source of really a vast number of the city's efforts to move forward in a progressive way towards sustainability and climate mitigation in so many areas over the last 10 years. And we're going to talk a little bit about that. So welcome, Andy, and thank you very much for coming tonight.
Thank you. Wow, after that introduction, I appreciate that. It's balance. My kid just got crushed in
Oh, really?
the Pinewood Derby on a car I spent way too much time on. So so it's good balance tonight. Thank you. Happy to be here.
Well, having been a fellow Pine Derby loser, I can tell you he's in good company with a lot of us out there. So. But yeah, thanks for coming, Andy. And I thought we'd start a little bit by talking about how you got involved in the position that you were in for a decade or so as I believe your title is the Environmental Deputy for Council District 5. Is that correct?
I started out as a deputy, and then I got director, and then executive director.
Oh, forgive me. I didn't mean to
But it was,
downplay.
it's how they keep you around. I got involved. I think this is germane to this whole climate, to this group, Climate Reality and everything. I was, I first started paying attention to climate back in probably 89 or so, whenever McKibben's book, The End of Nature, came out. And in it, he said, the rainforests are getting cut down for cattle herds. And I was like, all right. So I stopped eating beef, and that was going to be the thing I did for climate change. And 10 years go by, and it keeps getting worse, and nobody's getting involved. And then I think Al Gore came out with An Inconvenient Truth, and people started paying a little more attention. And I was like, all right, good, somebody's going to handle it. And things kept not going well for the climate movement, and things also kept not going well for my screenwriting career. And it was literally like I almost sold a screenplay. I turned in a final draft like right the September 6th, 2001. It was about a plane crash. And on the 16th, my producers called and said, we can't make this now, Andy.
No.
And um, and then I lost my job in the 2008, my day job in the 2008 crash, financial crash, recession, whatever you want to call it. And then I started taking sustainability classes at UCLA Extension, and this was at my dad's advice, his Pinewood Derby advice, not so good, but good career advice. And he said, you've always been interested in this environmental stuff. Maybe look into sustainability. It seems like a good job. So I started taking UCLA extension classes in the certificate program from Narit Katz, who's our newest DWP commissioner. And I was in one of the classes, and Leslie Tamminen was speaking, and she said, if anybody wants to learn how to lobby, I'll be happy to mentor you. And I raised my hand. 2 weeks later, I was on a plane to Sacramento. Leslie doesn't mess around. And suddenly I was working on the state plastic bag ban. It was 2010. And it lost because 7 senators voted it down for, $3,900 piece. And I was like, screw you, American Chemistry Council. We're going to do this in LA. And so I started going neighborhood council by neighborhood council, thinking that if I got 3 out of 5 neighborhood councils in each of the city council districts, that the city council members would have to vote for it. I figured it would take me 2 months. It took me 2 years, and I kept bringing the support to Councilmember Kretz, who introduced the motion. And finally, he's like, "We need to get a restraining order on you, or hire you." And I was like, "What do you want me to do?" And so literally, they said, "We want you to keep doing what you're doing." So I created my own position, and my job description was go be an activist at City Hall. And and so the climate has kept getting worse. Paul Koretz was really one of the bravest council members I've ever seen. He's kind of like, I'll go out on a limb with you as long as you can get me back. And he did a lot of really aggressive climate work. He was the first one to call to get DWP off of coal power. DWP said that'll never happen. And, cut to 2019, we demolished the Navajo generating station, and we're on our way out of the Intermountain Power Project. So it was really a remarkable path. And we can talk about some of the big initiatives we worked on. We finished the plastic bag ban, of course, and that paved the way. Maybe that's not the word, but that blazed the trail for the statewide ban, and so many other things that we did. And I was really grateful to have the opportunity to work with Councilmember Koretz. I never expected to be in politics, and and now that his term has ended, I'm kind of like, whoa, where did that go? Okay, so anyway, what else? What other questions do you have, Charles?
Well, I have a whole bunch. I'm not sure in this day and age which metaphor has less sustainability, credibility,
Blaze a
paving the
trail, yeah.
future or blazing a trail. It's like we got to come up with something that seems more green. That's not too cheesy. But I'm curious if you could tell us about. I mean, because everybody, by virtue of the fact of being here, I would classify as an advocate. I mean, you don't come to this meeting if you don't care. And I would say that there must be substantial differences in how you approach things when you went from working on the outside to advocate for change to suddenly be in person inside the room who, had to be very much aware of your internal relationships and, your uppers and your people above you, people below you, those kind of things within structure. So could you talk a little bit about the differences between advocating within a government system versus when you were free to kind of do what you want prior to that?
Especially in City Hall, it's so important not only your relationships with the other council offices, not only your relationship with the mayor's team, but with the bureaucrats, because you may be on the opposite end of an issue this week that you really want them to something you really accept, you want them to take, and you're going to need them for something else next week. Around the horseshoe, you're going to need their vote for something else, and you have to know, like when Paul Krikorian was the chair of budget, you don't want to piss off Paul Krikorian because you might get your vote, but then he's not going to fund it. So you really have to pay attention to a huge kind of mosaic of moving parts. And so what that looked like for me is I got myself in a lot of trouble. Like, let's be real. I got in a lot of trouble. I feel like I got called to the principal's office. I was in Herb Wesson's office one day. He's like, he always called me big guy. He's like, big guy, what the hell were you thinking? Like, I was this close to the council president telling Paul Kress to fire me. And I'm not going to get into why, but there was a bunch of those. When Felipe Fuentes took over as chair of Energy and Environment, he wouldn't let any of Paul Koretz's motions go forward. And so we had to figure out other ways. We had to introduce motions that didn't go through Energy and Environment. So we started working on parks, and we started working on trees, and we started working on different things that wouldn't go through Felipe Fuentes. And then when he suddenly quit, FBI informant, anyone, right before everybody else started getting in trouble, we were able to get a lot more things done with Mitch O'Farrell as chair. And it's because I had a really great relationship with one of his staffers. And I had a great relationship with one of Paul Krikorian's staffers. And so this big finale finish that we had over the last 6 months or 8 months now was really because I had developed these really good relationships, and people trust you. And if you're going to vote against somebody, instead of just blindsiding them, you tell them what's coming. Like, we're going to vote against this.
I would think one of the difficulties of being in your position is that so many times with sustainability issues, with climate issues, there is scientific consensus on this is what we need to do, and it is very clear cut. And then when you get into the political arena, a lot of times that is not the option that you are given, and so you are faced with do I take a thing that's a modest improvement but really not good enough for what I think needs to be done? And I think that would be difficult for me to reconcile at times. And I'm curious how you would sometimes, if you encountered situations like that and how you tried to deal with them.
When Mayor Garcetti took over for Mayor Villaraigosa back in 2013, and he hired Matt Peterson, who they announced as the first chief sustainability officer, but Villaraigosa had somebody who was kind of like the deputy of environment, kind of same position. And Matt's put together the sustainability plan, and the way that he did that was he went to all of the departments and basically said, what do you think you can do? And my approach has always been, what do we actually need to do? Not what can we do, but what do we need to do to get to carbon neutral so that we can keep the planet habitable? And so that was an inherent conflict, like right out of the gate. And they wrote that whole sustainability plan on what departments thought they could do. And from the city council point of view, being the policymakers, we're supposed to figure out what we need to do and tell them that we need to do this, and then they have to figure out how to get there, or you have to help them figure out how to get there. So one of the biggest conflicts in city bureaucracy is, like Charles was talking about before with the trees, is how do we, if we want to really promote healthy biodiversity within the city. And we've got a department that is for decades done things in a certain way for trees. And then we hire somebody because we want her to redo the whole city tree policy, and then she ends up backing the bureaucrats instead of doing the progressive biodiversity policies that we wanted and hired her for. That gets to be a problem. So there's a lot of stuff like that, but the climate reality is we have to reduce our greenhouse gas emissions to zero by 2030 in 7 years now. And we have to stop messing around. We have to stop letting special interests drive the bus, drive the diesel bus. We have to stop letting people, like with the wildlife corridors. One of the council members, whose name I'm not going to say, has really weakened it a lot because.
Let's explain what that is for people who are not aware of that, because you really were one of the pioneers, if not the champion of that project through your office for a decade. And it was a tremendous amount of work. And could you explain a little bit about what the Wildlife Corridors Initiative was and what the goals were and where we are today with that?
Yeah. So back when P22 let himself be discovered in 2012, 2013, we started thinking about how can we as a city, how can Los Angeles, the city known for concrete jungles and freeways and conspicuous consumption, how can we start to prioritize the protection of our wild creatures, and how do we come to grips with the fact that we have an apex predator living in Griffith Park? And so we started working with UCLA, and UCLA came out with a grand challenge, and one aspect of the grand challenge was to protect biodiversity in Los Angeles. I forget what the goal was, by 2050. And so we introduced legislation to take the Singapore City Index, which was the kind of the gold standard in the world, to count and account for our biodiversity. So the index basically gives you a system to count all the plants and animals and then account for them going forward. And it wasn't really apples to apples. So we ended up creating our own LA City Index and actually improving on the Singapore City Index. And as part of that, then we introduced legislation to protect wildlife habitat connectivity in the hillsides. And that was the Wildlife Corridors Ordinance that Councilmember Koretz introduced, I think in 2013 or 2014. And we worked on this for so long to, and the people who live in the hillsides were complaining that protected trees are getting cut down, and giant mansions are going up, and how can we protect our quality of life? And part of that quality of life is protecting habitat for creatures like P22 to get around and continue to live, and deer, and just building one mansion and putting fences in the way can block this group of deer from interacting with and breeding with this group of deer. And then they start interbreeding and having children with their siblings, and it's just a death spiral from a DNA point of view. And the planning department has dug in its heels for 8 years. We finally just kept going bald knuckle with them, and finally got them moving, and the mayor's office started to help. But then we got through the city planning commission in December, and we're still like this close to having an ordinance, but it keeps getting weakened. And one of the ways that it was weakened was they tried to exempt R1 and R2 zones, which are those are the houses that are like going to block connectivity. So it's almost pointless if we exempt them. And the people who actually live in the hillsides and understand what it takes, it's not going to reduce the value of their homes. Any wildlife conservation area actually always increases the value of homes. And but there's been this big realtor and these developers who basically are lying to groups of people about what this is going to do, and they've been fighting it. And then they hired these lobbyists. If you're going to reform lobbying, this is the company you start with, named Actum, and they include Barbara Boxer, Mayor Villaraigosa, Fabian Nunez, the former Speaker of the Assembly, and then some of the slimiest lobbyists in town. And those are the people who have like whole sections of the city on speed dial for like, oh, it's gonna increase the cost of your grocery bags. You're gonna have to pay 25 cents for a plastic bag. They're the people who did that. They're the people who have their mothers and fathers donate to campaigns because they can't. Um, and they're incredibly powerful and really need to be paid attention to. But they're actually in the way of the wildlife corridors. And we had this big celebration for P22. We should use that, the wind of that, to finish this and get it done and protect the future P22s from happening. And literally we already got the regional wildlife habitat connectivity master plan got approved by the council last March or May or something. So all we have to do is finish this ordinance, and then it will be a citywide ordinance instead of just the pilot in between the 405 and the 101. But they keep the planning department right now is planning to weaken it even more when it comes to council. And the only way to stop that is for them to hear from all of you, from the climate reality folks and the neighborhood councils and all the enviro groups. And that's the only way it's going to get fixed.
So to that end, I mean, your story there is both encouraging and disheartening to some extent. It's there's a decade of work and a tremendous amount of science to support the positions, and then I feel your frustration and your ability to kind of be a little more freewheeling in what you're explaining, because you're out of office now, kind of a thing, or not that you were elected official, but you're out of that position now. But I'm curious what, both specifically to this issue and to, in a larger sense, for people in this room who have a little bit of time, but they don't have 40 hours a week to spend on something like this, how do they identify people like you in local government and provide assistance in advocacy for them?
If Climate Reality as an organization, which has and can be very effective, just picks like a certain issue every 6 weeks or something, and pushes really hard, pushes the council really hard, and gathers together coalitions to work with them, from the Neighborhood Council Sustainability Alliance to Sierra Club to Food and Water Watch, and the environmental justice groups, Leap LA, Stand LA Coalition, that we another issue we worked on for a really long time, but we actually pulled off to ban oil drilling, and really band together and go meet. And Zoom meetings are so easy now. Just meet with the council member and say, we've got these 15, 20 groups who want to meet with you, council member, and talk to you about this one issue or about these 5 issues. And if you just keep putting pressure on them, I guarantee you the people who are fighting against, for example, the wildlife corridors, they're constantly hearing from them. So it sounds louder than it actually is. It's a small group of people, but they're really vocal. And the supporters, we had 400 people show up for the planning commission hearing in support, and there was only like 200 against it, and it was the same 200 that have been fighting it the whole time. And we just need the numbers. And if you keep showing up and you stay involved, then you start to get to know the staff members, and then you can call them up and say, hey, this is, I think you guys should look at this, or you should think about this. Or, if you offer improvements, this is supposedly a more progressive city council. And so if one of the things I love about Paul Koretz is when they brought, for instance, when are we going to electrify our bus fleet? And Bonin brought it as 2030. And so I just had Koretz change it on the fly in the council meeting to 2025. Like, always make things stronger, always look for ways to improve things. And if you start to bring those to the staffers will start to rely on you as an expert and trust you. But cautionary tale too, with the wildlife corridors, the advocates told me they had a meeting recently with the office is kind of a problem on this, and they're like, well, we're all in this together, right? But they're the ones that are actually weakening this. So it's like you can be too good of friends, and like the Stand LA coalition really got good at, well, we're friends, but this issue is bigger than all of us. And if you don't do what we want you to do, we're going to beat you up for it. And they did. And they were great that way. And so I'm not particularly tight with a lot of those folks, but even though we did a lot of most of what they wanted, and we actually got the oil drilling ban done. So there's a way to maintain your professionalism, but stick to your guns and get things done. And that's the key. But it's really important to be professional and not lose your cool, and be respectful, and really stick to your beliefs and stick to what you want too.
Yeah. And I've said to quite a few people in the past that the art of, I'm getting an echo. So if you are not named Andy Shrader, please mute yourself for the moment. Oh, well, I didn't want you to mute yourself, Andy, but you did. I've said to people that the art of advocacy is finding a way to identify what the good things politicians want to do and giving them the political cover to do it. And I feel like that's what we kind of have to do in our role as advocates. I want to give people some very clear cut, especially for the people where a lot of this feels like it's inside baseball more than they want to wrap their brains around. I'm curious. You referenced the bags, you referenced the coal, you referenced the drilling. Can you, for somebody who maybe doesn't know anything about the work at City Council in the last 10 years, can you talk about very quickly, maybe 3 things that you played a role in that have changed the face of politics, give people some positive, vibes, and that the things we do make a difference if we stick to it?
The first 2 things I worked on with Paul Koretz were getting LA off of coal power, getting LADWP off of coal power, and banning plastic bags. So we did that, both of those, and each of those was like a path that we took. And so the ending coal power then led to, okay, now we need to end natural gas, because the natural gas industry has successfully sold natural gas as, oh, this isn't as bad as coal. It's actually worse. If in the short term, methane is a much worse for the environment. And
well, they've also very successfully branded the methane as natural gas and gotten everybody to adopt that innocuous term that we all use to describe it.
Yeah, exactly. So instead, we should refer to it as fracked gas, because that's what it is. And so we started to push to get off of gas and to close down our coastal gas plants. Garcetti, actually, you can look this up. There's a big LA Times article about it, that we were halting. I worked with Food and Water Watch, so this is part of what Charles was referring to. I worked really closely with on a Food and Water Watch as scientists, and we figured out a way to close down the scattergood plant by extending. There's something called once-through cooling that was supposed to end in 2025, and we were able to extend the deadline for that if we were going to get scattergood off of natural gas. And so the Heal the Bay and some of the coastal folks, orgs who had pushed for that were like, okay, we see the bigger benefit. And so we're not going to fight you on extending the deadline as long as you're going to get those coastal plants off of natural gas. And so now it's, oh, we're going to do green hydrogen. And DWP, now this is this huge game that the fracked gas industry is playing, is they're pushing hydrogen on everybody. And so DWP is like, we're going to use 100% renewable green hydrogen, and but we're going to mix it with natural gas. So it's like, it's 100% green hydrogen, but we're going to mix it with natural gas. And that's how they're going to keep it cheap, because it's really expensive. And so we, so we really, that whole push, I'm going to stick with the thread of your question, that whole push toward 100% renewable energy continues. And when we brought up the push for 100% renewable energy was when Felipe Fuentes was the chair, and I knew if Paul Koretz introduced that motion that he would never hear it. So I put my head together with the Sierra Club, and they took it to Paul Krikorian. He introduced it, and because he was the budget chair, he was able to get it heard. And they've done a great job, and he's got a really smart team. And so DWP, an organization called NREL, the National Renewable Energy Lab, which is a Department of Energy, basically energy think tank, has been running it for 7 years now. And we've been trying to figure out the pathways to 200% renewable energy. And that's become what the Department of Energy calls the pathway for the whole country. And so what we do in LA really matters, and they're really seeing this as the pathway. But the fracked gas industry keeps trying to like maneuver us so that gas stays in the system. And if we keep it in the system in LA, it's going to stay in the system nationwide. So 100% renewable energy, I've been a big part of that. I was a big part of the LEAP LA coalition, and I basically created the Climate Emergency Mobilization Office so that our climate policies would be vetted through an environmental justice lens. We created the Climate Emergency Commission to actually vet our climate policies. And then our very first policy that we vetted over the last year and a half was building electrification. And we did it, we were doing it for new buildings, and we were doing it for existing buildings. And so building electrification has been one of my babies. And we figured out that we could get the new building electrification done quicker. And so we got that one done by December 11th last month. And the new building or existing building electrification still needs people pushing on that to get that done. It's a lot harder because we're really trying hard not to impact lower income folks. So that was a big thing we were working on. Koretz introduced a motion to ban the permitting of new gas stations. Petaluma actually did this a year and a half ago, and he introduced that motion. There's no reason to permit new gas stations. If Governor Newsom is going to end the sale of gas cars in California by 2030, which is 10 years too late, then why do we still need to build the infrastructure that's going to be a brownfield that the city is going to have to pay to clean up in 13 years?
And
so
to talk about that process a little bit, Andy, you say Councilmember Koretz introduced the motion, and I know you're used to always giving credit to the council member you were attached to. But what something like that means is that you did the really in-depth research on it and you wrote it. And then he, because he's busy with his irons in many different fires, he comes in, consults with you, and you guys get on board and go forward and maybe make some edits based on that. But you then ultimately become the author of so many of these environmental things. And I think that's what I want people to have as a takeaway, is that we need people like you in those positions and to work with you guys in order to get things to happen. Is that fairly characterized?
That is fair. It's hard for me to talk about it this way because, Councilmember Koretz's name is on the shingle, and, he's paying me and he gets the credit, and he fully acknowledges, most of them do, that the staffers do all the work and they get all the credit, but they're the ones that also have to run for election and do all the hard work and make all the hard compromises that I don't want to do, that I don't want to make. Uh, but yeah, most of Paul Koretz's environmental motions over the last 10 years have been written by me and initiated by, if not somebody bringing it to me, initiated by me in other ways. I've done most of the research. I've written most of the motions, and then I have to figure out the strategy to get it approved. And some of them are more difficult than others.
Yeah,
And
that's
one of
very
the things,
much that's very much what I want people to kind of take away, is that we need to have these relationships with people in your position. And it's so valuable when we have people like you who are not just doing what they're directed to do, but pushing, trying to move the needle from within. And I think that's such an important thing. And that's why I wanted you to be able to be here tonight. I want to give a few minutes to everybody here to ask questions. We don't have a lot of time for that, but if anybody has questions, you can raise your hand or put it in the chat room. And, Andy's a straight shooter, so don't be afraid to ask him a tough one. So anybody want to raise your hand, throw them in the, we've got Vice Chair Andy, our other Andy.
Yeah, sorry.
Go ahead.
Andy, hopefully this is a quick one. How did you get the experience and where do you get the expertise for writing bills and measures? Because a lot of us on this call don't have that expertise. How do volunteers get that so that we can then craft things that people like you and staff members can use and actually turn into impactful bills or policies?
I haven't taken a single political science class in my entire life. And I've written 17 screenplays. And so I'm not afraid of the blank page. And instead of thinking in characters now, I've really started to think in motions. And so I think the way that you can learn to do that is really go to the council file, go to City Clerk Connect. And it's the only council office in the whole country that I know of. City Clerk Connect will get you to the council file, and look up Paul Koretz's motions, and just like start to understand the format. We at City Hall had the chief legislative analyst who were supposed to be our we would tell them we wanted a motion about this, and then they would write it, and they would be sort of the brains of the city council. The problem is they would always write things much more safely than I would write it. And so I just, instead of having them rewrite it 11 times and getting it wrong each time, I just started to write it pretty early. I have a terrible relationship with the head CLA policy guy, and he hasn't talked to me since 2015, because I just I'm like, you guys are terrible. You're not actually writing what we want you to write. And so I just had to I had to learn it. It's definitely a format, but if you look at it, it's like, city's been doing this, but we're not doing enough. And so here's the new here's the big problem we're trying to solve, and let's look into solving it this way. That's the basic format. And it's important to understand that a resolution is different than a motion. A resolution is the city council Yeah, that's the one that starts with whereas blah blah blah, whereas blah blah blah. That's the city council telling another governmental entity what to do. And a motion is an ordinance telling the people of Los Angeles this is going to be a law, or uh, telling the city departments what to do. And that's what motions are. And just if you just look at a bunch of them and then try writing some if you have some ideas. um, it's not always the best idea to bring a fully formed motion to a council staffer like me, because I know them so well, and I'm going to sit there and look at yours and be like, okay, I love the moving clause is the most important thing. I therefore move that the city attorney should report back in 90 days with an ordinance uh, banning the permitting of new gas stations. And everything before that actually doesn't really matter. You're sort of making the case why you should do that. And the stuff that's above that is for the other staffers. You're saying this is why we should do that. The other council members don't really read that. Some of them do. Bob Blumenfield reads everything. Krikorian reads everything. But a lot of them will just read the moving clause. And so that's, if you bring the moving clause to a staffer and say, hey, let's, there's another motion that we introduced, a bunch of motions that right before we left that I'm hoping people will pick up and run with. But see what we could do about getting a climate tax on private airplanes in Los Angeles. And so if you bring that idea to a council staffer and let them write the motion, sometimes that will get you further. Sometimes I would write motions with other people. Some of those would end up really, really long. One of the most important things to remember is you really want to keep it to one page. And when somebody outside the building writes it, and I have this problem too, I'll try to get like everything into the motion. You don't have to do that. The most important thing is the moving clause. And literally, there's a few motions that are just the moving clause. And Wesson's staffers would just be like, I don't care what the other stuff is. I move that I'm blah blah blah. And anyway,
Michael, you
hope
had a
that,
question?
yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, I was curious about the hydrogen thing you were discussing. So I know LA committed to 100% renewable energy by 2035. And so I'm wondering how gas mixed with hydrogen would even comply with that. And I guess the second part is, what is your take on where the city council is right now with that? Is there a chance to block it, or is this just going to happen and there's not much at this point we can do?
We were able to keep the opposition alive right up until Koretz got out the door. But then the council approved what they've approved is directing the department to do an RFP for that project.
And what's an RFP?
Request for proposal, which means they're asking companies to come back and say, how could we have a hydrogen hub? But once they start that process and they start spending money, it's really hard to turn that around. I'm kind of a little stuck on this one just because we're going to be between 95 and 98% renewable energy by 2030. And then the last percentage, the really hard percentage, is the last 5%, which is for those extremely hot days and those extremely cold days. And especially in LA, it's the really hot days. And so the Scattergood plant, which they're repowering, is supposed to be a peaker plant. And what a peaker plant is it gets turned on in those, when we're using most of the turbines that are available to us. And this is just to get the last 5% so that we don't have a blackout. And so having that as a backup, and it's only going to be used once in a while on the very hottest days, which, you know, are going to increase, it's not a terrible plan. It's just not a purist plan, and it's not what we were promised, and it's not the deal we made with the one through cooling folks. So there's still a possibility to turn it around. The big problem is the fracked gas industry has gotten the federal government, they've got the California government, and now they've gotten the locals convinced that gas in the system is the only way to do this. And Sempra Energy, being a public entity who's guided by the principle of bringing stakeholder value, I wish somebody would take over the gas utilities, because that's a huge problem, and they've been censured at least three times by the California Public Utilities Commission for spending stakeholder money or ratepayer money on lobbying against building electrification and all of that.
I want to try to get in one more question, and
Yeah.
I think there's a big topic there, and it's one we're going to discuss as a chapter. The green hydrogen issue, the way it's often being discussed about being implemented, has kind of become 2023's clean coal, which, for the record, not too long ago was supported by both parties, even though it was always a greenwashing pipe dream thing. So Isaac, you're going to be our last question. So try to keep it brief for us so Andy can wrap it up with us.
Okay. Hi, Andy. My name's Isaac Lieberman. Thanks so much for what you've been doing. My question has to do with advocacy versus grassroots organizing. And if you understand what I mean by saying that, then that's my question. Can you tell us a little about your thoughts on those issues? And if not, then I can sort of explain a little more about the difference between the two, and then you can answer the question.
Well, I think you've probably got in mind a definition that maybe I don't. So if you want to go a little further, I'm happy to hear it.
Oh, okay. So I got a lot of the information I have about those issues from Jane McAlevy's pretty famous union organizer, who was on the ground in 2000 when Bush's team was stealing the presidential election in Florida from Al Gore. And what she said was, the movements that we're involved in trying to accomplish things like Green New Deal and resolving the climate crisis are often focused too much on advocating with elected officials and other elites, rather than organizing massive numbers of people to get involved, making demands in the streets and the ballot boxes. Does that make sense? Two different kind of.
Yeah. So I understand what you're saying. It helps to have marches, which have kind of died off during COVID. If you remember, there were some giant global marches from the Fridays for Future folks right before COVID, and those are helpful when after Trump got in the White House somehow, and we had the big rally downtown for women. It showed the city council that there was a huge amount of support against Trump, and the council felt like, okay, so our constituency wants us to fight against him, and it made them more aggressive than it would have otherwise, and that was great. But the problem with the marches, they take a lot of time to pull off, and then it's over, and the impact, it's like a little blip impact, and it can help you get like one or two things done, But then advocacy is just constant, ongoing engagement with the government and with an elected official or with the staff to constantly keep working toward a certain goal. You know, the Sierra Club, back when they were more effective, which they are not now, it was beyond coal. Like that was the name of their campaign, and that was their focus. And you know, if you can really stay focused, the Stand LA Coalition was all about ending oil drilling in Los Angeles, and they succeeded. And I don't know what they're going to do next, but it took a long time to get that done, and it took really intense engagement, ongoing engagement. And if the council wasn't doing what they needed to do, they would increase the the marches and stuff like that. They would increase young people who are getting sick and nosebleeds from oil drilling and bring them forward. And that was a really good campaign to study, I think, about this question that you're asking, because it's ongoing advocacy, but it's using grassroots organizing as a tool. And I think grassroots organizing is an essential tool, but it's part of a larger campaign strategy that you have to have in mind.
So ultimately, both are important, and they just serve different purposes. Is where we go with that. I want to wrap this up now and just say thank you so much, Andy, for doing this. We really appreciate it. I personally have appreciated your friendship and help over the years on many things I've been involved with, but in particular, I know that there are so many things that the city of LA has done that I don't think would have happened if you weren't in that system in the last 10 years. And we need people like you, and we need people to be aware of people like you to work with them. And just a big heartfelt thanks for doing this tonight. And I hope it softened the Pine Derby fiasco.
Well, I appreciate it, and thank you all for being involved. And Charles, I'm thrilled to see you stepping up into more leadership positions. Charles really helped us get native plants for the whole expo line within Council District 5, and has really guided me on a lot of those issues. And so I'm thrilled to see you stepping up into bigger leadership positions. And you know, it's really important for all of you to stay really engaged. This is supposed to be a more progressive council, and I really encourage you to make them stick to that. Like, make them more progressive, because they're going to be as progressive as you let them be. You know, help us get the wildlife corridors done, and don't let them weaken it. You know, help them get to carbon neutral by 2030. Like, make them do it. That's the only way that it's going to happen, because they're now that they're in power, they're going to coast a little bit. Like, push them, make them uncomfortable, and push really hard. The Neighborhood Council Sustainability Alliance has been an ongoing advocacy organization that's been effective by engaging really directly with the city, and now it's actually it actually has some power, and I helped start that. And we've tried to start webs of cities who are working together on climate action, the climate emergency cities. When we introduced our legislation to create the climate emergency office, since then 2,300 cities have declared climate emergencies. So people are really watching Los Angeles, they're watching California. So the influence you all have and the power you all have to make the city council do stuff is going to have repercussions throughout California, throughout the country, and around the world. So keep working at it hard. I'm not done yet, and you'll hear more from me somewhere. We'll talk about that another time. But thanks for doing this. Okay.
All right.
Take care, everybody.
Thanks so much, buddy. Now, don't go yet, because we have our t-shirt thing. So very, very quickly, we'll do a couple announcements right at the end. But I'm going to first show you what we have in terms of t-shirts. We have the white t-shirt that's current. These are all available for you. And if you go to our website, to Climate Reality, LA Climate Reality, and you here's how you basically acquire one of these. you go there and you make a donation. It's $30 for the t-shirts. If you're really cool, you'll click on the little box and pay the extra $1.50 or whatever it is to cover the processing fee. And it's $45 for the sweatshirt. And I'm going to just very quickly on my terrible camera show you what they look like. This is the white t-shirt. It says, what's it say? Support your local planet. There you go. We have this one available in small, medium, and large. This is the dark blue, which says Our Climate Moment, and on the back, it's, you know, got the Climate Reality Project. This one is available currently in small, large, and extra large. This one's kind of a grayish blue, kind of more of a hipster blue kind of a thing. And it's basically just Climate Reality Project Los Angeles chapter. And then lastly, here is the hoodie. Big notice, this is the only hoodie sweatshirt we have left. It says nothing on the front, which I find a little bit weird, but on the back it says, again, the support your local planet thing, and it's really soft and comfortable. I bought one of these myself and I'm pretty much in it every cold night, you know, just hanging around at home. So if you want one of these, and that one's only available in medium, that's the last one we have for eternity. So, you know, maybe we could get more, I don't know.
Charles, I have some in my car.
Oh, all
More in
right.
storage.
My Andy has more. So much for the demand I was trying to create, the artificial
Sorry, I have 'em.
shortage. Well, there might be other sizes available, but you can always check with Andy or me on something like that beforehand. But definitely in the sizes I mentioned earlier, you go on that link that I just put in the chat window and you can donate the amount. Then you send me an email and you can either come to my house and pick it up, my apartment, or you can meet me at the meeting on April 30th when we do the in-person at Westwood Greenway, and I'll happily bring it to you then. All right, so here's the way this is going to work. Everybody get ready to answer a question in your chat. And the first person who gives the correct answer is going to get one of the t-shirts, not the artificial demand hoodie, sorry, but any of the t-shirts in your size that's available is going to be, is what you're going to win if you were the first person who gets the correct answer in the chat window. So is everybody ready? Do you have your fingers ready to type? So at some point during the interview tonight, Andy was discussing green hydrogen, and he said it's not really going to be green because, as proposed, it's being mixed with something. What is it being mixed with? Joan, you were the first one, and at least that's the one I see. Does everybody concur that Joan's the first one? That is the correct answer. Natural gas. I also would have taken methane. I also would have accepted the actual chemical formula, but we will take natural gas. So Joan, I want you to email me, and you can contact me, I think, through the website, but even if you can't, or even if that, to make it super, super easy, I am now going to put my email in the chat window for all of you to use anytime you want it. And you can tell me which one you want, Joan, and you can either pick it up at April 30th at Westwood Greenway or arrange to come get it at my place. I live on the west side in the Palms area of LA. All right, guys, do we have any other last announcements from any of our chairs, any of our committee chairs? Cecile, did you have something you want to say?
We're planning our social hour on March the 8th, and details to be announced soon on the website.
Okay, we're finishing up at 8:30. I want to thank everybody so much for coming tonight and for all you're doing. Keep up the good work. We're all in this together, and we're going to keep fighting the good fight. So thank you so much, everybody. Have a good evening.